In this video, we're going to take a trip to have a look at Speke Hall. Now, Speke Hall is obviously in Speke in Liverpool, and I think I should point out that Speke Hall isn't typical of the houses in Speke. Some of them are not quite so grand. Anyway, let's take a trip to Speke Hall. We are on the edge of Speke's industrial area, and we are a stone's throw away from Liverpool's John Lennon Airport. We are also a couple of stone throws away from Liverpool's old airport. We are also close to the banks of the River Mersey and the Oglet shoreline, which runs down to Hale and Hale Bank. This road here is called the Walk, although obviously I'm not walking today, but that's what it's called, and we're heading towards the car park. Now, the first time I came here was on a school trip from my primary school, Kingsthorne in Hunts Cross, which isn't too far away. We either came here on a bus or a coach and spent the afternoon here. And talking about the mid-60s now, and back then, an afternoon when you were at the junior school wasn't actually that long, because we finished at 3:30. And if you take lunch into account, we probably had a couple of hours here. But it is pretty much imprinted on my memory, coming here, having a look round the hall, both inside and out, upstairs and downstairs. Now, I did mean to come here earlier in the year and film the hall in the summer when the gardens are at their best and the trees have leaves, but unfortunately it didn't work out like that, and here I am filming it in the depths of winter. But I will come back late spring, early summer next year and film it in all its glory and do a short video about it. So just need to park up now. Don't know what we're doing. Right, just park up and oh, that's not a good place, is it? Didn't see all those potholes full of water. Right, let's find a better place further up. So once I'm parked up, we'll go through the entrance and I'll see you on the way to the hall. This pathway is the edge of their back garden, I guess, and there are still one or two flowers around, just on the edge of the garden here, and some of the trees still have leaves as well, so all is not lost, but we'll still come back and do it when it's looking its splendid best next year. So let's do some history. Yours is better than that. So Speke Hall is a timber-framed wattle and daub Tudor Manor House. I thought I might have a look at what wattle and daub actually means. So basically this is a timber-framed house which sits on top of a sandstone base, and the daub part is basically a sticky material, usually made from some sort of combination of wet soil, clay, sand, animal dung and straw, and that's the white part that we see, which is between the timbers. So construction of the current building began under Sir William Norris in 1530, although earlier buildings had been on this site and parts of those are incorporated in today's structure. So basically the building began in 1530. The Great Hall was the first part of the house to be built, and everything else we see has been added on. The last significant change to the building was done in 1598, and that was the addition of the North Range. That was done by William Norris's son, Edward Norris, and since then there have only been minor changes to the hall and gardens. So as I said, it's a timber frame. It's actually made from oak, and apparently this was typical of the period, and it rests on red sandstone. As I said earlier, this is the rear of the house and the rear gardens, and on the other three sides the house is surrounded by a dry moat, which we'll have a look at once we move away from the rear. The house was owned by the Norris family for many generations until 1736, when Mary Norris, who was the heiress, married Lord Sidney Beauclerk. After Mary's death in 1766, the house was leased to various tenants. Richard Watt, a Liverpool merchant, purchased the house and the estate from the Beauclerks in 1795. The last surviving heir of the Watt family was Miss Adelaide Watt, who inherited the house and returned to it in 1878 at the age of 21. She died in 1921, leaving the house and the estate in trust for 21 years, during which time it was looked after by the staff under the supervision of Thomas Watmore, who had been the butler to Miss Watt. So basically this Adelaide Watt lived here on her own and just had her servants for company, and towards the end of her life she made provision for the staff to live here on their own for 21 years. So the end of this 21-year period brings us to 1943, and the house is passed into the ownership of the National Trust. The house was administered by Liverpool City Corporation from 1946 until 1974, when it passed then to Merseyside County Council, and they carried out a 7-year programme of major structural repairs and the restoration, which was completed in 1983. The National Trust took over full responsibility in 1986. The gardens date from the 1850s. We're now walking in the dry moat that I mentioned earlier, and the bridge in front of us there takes us to the main entrance of the house. If we go back to the early days of Speke Hall, the grounds back then would have been a lot larger than they are now. Liverpool's original airport, Speke Airport, was built within the grounds of Speke Hall, and I'm pretty sure that the new airport, Liverpool's John Lennon, also takes up part of Speke Hall's land as well.
Oh. Yeah, she's going to take a picture of it.
It should be said before somebody leaves a comment that the Norris family, the original owners of the Speke Hall that we see today, and the Watt family, which came along later and lived here for many, many years, both had links to the transatlantic slave trade. So we've just had a look round the one side and the front of Speke Hall. Just going to take you around the other side and into the rear garden where we started this video, and then we're going to have a little peep inside. Now I hope that you can see from this video that even though there's a couple of airports which have trimmed some of the land off this hall, the surrounding gardens are still quite extensive. There's also a maze here as well. This is the rear garden where we started our video, and looking in the direction of the house, can't actually see it, I don't think, hidden by the trees, but in this direction is the River Mersey, and it's only a short walk down to the banks of the Oglet shoreline. Many people do take a stroll along there. Well worth a look if you ever visit here. Many things go on inside the hall, and it's not always possible to get inside, especially at this time of the year. It was limited to just a couple of days a week. I think it's pretty much like that during the year. So if you want to actually see inside the hall, I would find out when the hall is actually open to the public. It's not every day. Right, so I guess you've noticed that this was filmed over 2 days. Some of the trees have more leaves on in our first visit than they did in our second. We're going to take a walk down the pathway to the front of the house, where we should be able to get a pretty good view. But I'm sure you can see, even though a couple of airports have taken some land away from Speke Hall, the gardens are still quite extensive. Pretty difficult to film it with the sun right behind the hall. You can see it flaring up there in the lens. Okay, so let's take a look inside the hall. On this particular day, we could only see the downstairs rooms. The bedrooms were not open to the public. When I come back next year in the late spring or summer, hopefully we will pick a day where we can actually get into the bedrooms and have a look at those. I did read one article on the internet which said Speke Hall is a Tudor house which is dressed up as a Victorian mansion. And I guess it does have a bit of a Victorian feel about it. But nonetheless, this is actually a Tudor house. And when this was built in 1520, Henry VIII was on the throne. So the Tudors, the House of Tudor, lasted from 1485 to 1603, and the first Tudor monarch was Henry VII, and he was on the throne from August 1485 to April 1509. So the next king was his son, Henry VIII, and he's probably one of the most famous kings in history, famous for having 6 wives. He was on the throne from April 1509 to January 1547. So Henry was on the throne when Speke Hall was built. I think that gives a bit of an inkling of how old Speke Hall actually is. Henry VIII was on the throne. One of the most vivid memories I have of visiting Speke Hall when I was a child on a school trip from Kingsthorne Primary School were 2 trees, 2 yew trees, which are called Adam and Eve. The larger tree is the male, Adam, and the smaller tree is the female, Eve. Now, Adam could possibly be 1,000 years old, and Eve is thought to be at least 500 years old. Now that means that they were here before the house was built. So this courtyard was built around the trees. Anyway, back to the Tudors. Henry VIII was succeeded by Edward VI. He was on the throne from January 1547 to the 6th of July 1553. And then the next person to take the throne was Lady Jane Grey, and she managed to be on the throne for 9 days. She was ousted, I think, and story and a half, I guess. But the next monarch was Mary, and she was on the throne from July 1553 to November 1558. She actually managed 5 years. The next one was a king named Philip, and he was on the throne from 1554 to 1558. He managed 4 years. And the last monarch was Elizabeth I, and she was on the throne from November 1558 to March 1603, and she's the last of the Tudor monarchs. After that, along came the Stuarts, which were a Scottish house. The Tudors were actually English Welsh, and in heritage. And of course there was also the War of the Roses during the Tudor time. Henry VIII, I think, were Lancaster, and the House of York having the Wars of the Roses. Just like to say thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch up soon.